Next on the news, the deacon that's helping others help themselves.
When crime is up, takedowns are a must. I'm Jessica Easthope with the Catholic deacon who's teaching self-defense amid a rise in unprovoked attacks in New York City.
Also tonight, His Holiness prepares for a trip to Hungary.
He's making good on that promise.
What the pontiff hopes to accomplish during his visit. In need of help, Border Patrol agents ask local police for backup because of a rise in migrant crossings. Then this.
I think it's wonderful she put up with me.
A diamond anniversary, the couple celebrating 75 years of marriage. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Martial arts moves like this used to be saved for karate class, but now you're more likely to need them once you leave the dojo for defense against sidewalk attacks. In just the first 3 months of this year, arrests for serious crimes in New York City hit a 24-year high. So one Catholic deacon is trading in his cassock for a karate gi, hoping to prepare as many people as he can through martial arts. For the first time in a long time, Deacon Dean Dobbins says New Yorkers need to learn to protect themselves. Currents News' Jessica Easthope got to kick it with him at his studio in Fresh Meadows.
The Holy Spirit powers these kicks, and faith fuels the force of these strikes. Deacon Dean Dobbins says when it comes to self-defense, you can never be too prepared.
Don't touch me. You never know what perpetrator might be coming at you. You never know, especially in times like this.
The permanent deacon at Our Lady of Mercy Church in Forest Hills is also a former NYPD detective and 8th degree black belt who knows just how dangerous the streets of New York City have become.
People are getting pushed into subways, people are getting mugged, people are getting punched in the face, and people that would take the martial arts, maybe they would be able to defend themselves, walk away from it, but be more secure of the surroundings.
While the NYPD doesn't keep statistics on random and unprovoked attacks, so far in the first 4 months of 2023, there have been nearly 8,000 felony assaults and more than 12,600 misdemeanor assaults. That's more than the number of assaults in the entirety of 2022. At Deacon Dean's dojo, the Okinawan Karate Do of New York, he welcomes people from all walks of life to come in and learn the discipline and inner strength it takes to stay safe on the streets. Destin Kava is a 7th grader at Our Lady of Mercy Catholic Academy. Since he and his cousin Solmari Navas started taking karate lessons here last year, they're more self-aware and much more confident.
I don't have both of my headphones in or anything like that. I make sure that I'm careful.
Now, since I'm in martial arts, I'm starting to communicate, socialize even more.
Thumb strike, this is great for women.
Deacon Dean says his classes are not about fighting, but thriving.
It helps them in school, helps them in their faith, and it helps them to be aware what's out there.
And what's out there? Better think twice. In Fresh Meadows, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Regardless of how old you are, Deacon Dean believes anyone is capable of accomplishing these defensive moves. He told us about one move that everyone can master. Let's watch right now.
Let's say the person is older, right? Like me, right? Person grabs you, hey, you're in a situation, you're a martial artist, boom, strike, grab, and sweep them down. Right? So you could be from 50 to 100 and do that if done correctly. All right?
Remember, Deacon Dean believes that children, teens, and adults are capable of these moves, no matter the opponent. It's easy to sign up for classes at Deacon Dean's Okinawan Karate Do of New York. If you're interested, simply visit facebook.com/karateny. Speaking of a rise in violence, we are seeing a rise in active shooter deaths and injuries, according to a new FBI report. Last year, 313 people were either killed or wounded. That's the highest count within the last 5 years. There were 50 active shooter incidents that took place in areas like schools, places of worship, and homes. The Bureau defines an active shooter as someone trying to kill people in a populated area. Life in prison. That's the punishment being handed down to Jose Gonzalez for murdering a woman who spent her life rescuing others. Gonzalez was convicted of running over Yadira Arroyo in 2017 with her stolen ambulance. Arroyo was an FDNY EMT worker and a mother of 5. Over at the Holy See, Pope Francis is preparing for a trip to Hungary this weekend. It's the closest the Holy Father will have come to the conflict in Ukraine since it started last February. And the pontiff is using the trip to promote hope and peace in the country. Pope Francis will touch down in Hungary this Friday, sending a message of hope during his visit, especially to the refugees of the war in Ukraine that he's set to meet. He'll also chat with Hungary's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, who has stood in stark contrast with Pope Francis's view on migration. The right-wing populist leader has earned a reputation for being harsh towards refugees, thanks in part to his response to the 2015 Syrian refugee crisis, which included building a 13-foot razor wire fence along Hungary's southern border. During the Russian conflict, Orban has backed down from his anti-immigration rhetoric, instead choosing to open borders. Some 2.5 million people have crossed into Hungary following the invasion. Around 35,000 have remained in the country. Pope Francis has repeatedly shown his support for welcoming refugees, but he's also recognized that it must be done practically.
Dobbiamo fare ponti, ma I ponti si fanno intelligentemente.
Where Orban and the Pope do see eye to eye is on peace in the conflict. The Prime Minister saying the Hungarian government is advocating for peace with Russia, which the Pope has been praying for since the invasion began.
Hungary and the Holy See are the only two countries in Europe that have strongly spoken up for peace in the Ukraine war.
The Holy Father will meet with Prime Minister Orban not long after he touches down on Friday. During his first day there, he will also meet the President of the Republic and local clergy. On Saturday, Pope Francis will be with the people, first visiting visually impaired children. Then he'll meet with those refugees I mentioned at the Church of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. Finally, the Pope will meet with young people at a sports arena where he will deliver a speech. On Sunday, the Holy Father will celebrate Mass at what is commonly known as Nation Square in the center of Budapest. He will then deliver his final speech of the trip to members of the cultural and academic world at the Faculty of Information Technology and Bionics at a Catholic university before heading back to Rome. Senior correspondent for Crux, Elise Allen, will be traveling with the Pope. She joins us now. Hi, Elise.
Hi, Christine.
So, Elise, Pope Francis visited Budapest in 2021 to close out the Eucharistic Congress, but he didn't stay to actually visit the country. Some saw that as a snub because of Hungary's tough line on migration. Do you think that was the case?
You know, it's a good question. The Pope was in Budapest for less than 10 hours. He was there for about 7 hours before moving on to Slovakia for a 3-day trip. So at the time, many people really did interpret this as kind of a snub or an insult to Hungary, and specifically to their Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, who has very differing views than the Pope, specifically on the issue of migration. I think at the time, many people really did interpret that as kind of the Pope giving him the cold shoulder. In 2021, he promised the Hungarians that he was going to return. So he is doing that. He's making good on that promise. But the question of why is he doing that so soon? You know, I think that really has a lot to do with the war in Ukraine. You know, Hungary is a very strategic place if the Pope wants to send a message. You know, it shares 85 miles of a border with Ukraine. It has taken in over 1 million Ukrainian refugees. And so this is really, if the Pope wants to send a message to Ukraine and to Russia, to both of them, and to make an appeal for peace, Hungary is really a very meaningful place to do that from. And so I think that's a lot of his motive for coming back right now.
Right, and the Pope is expected to meet with some of the Ukrainian refugees in Hungary. But while the Prime Minister, as you mentioned there, has taken in these refugees, he's refused to supply Ukraine with weapons. He was against EU sanctions towards Moscow. What will Francis's message be to him and also to the refugees?
Well, I think his message to the refugees is going to be very clearly one of comfort, one of consolation. He's going to be there as a pastor who is close to his people who are suffering. And when it comes to Viktor Orban, speaking of sanctions and you know, the hesitancy, the refusal to send weapons into Ukraine, you know, Pope Francis has been on the fence about that in the past. He has voiced doubt about whether that is an effective solution to the conflict. You know, so I think this might be one area where the two of them share more of an aligned view.
All right, and then the Cardinal of Hungary's Roman Catholic Church expects the visit to be just a celebration of Christian unity. The Pope's itinerary includes a stop at a Greek Catholic church that's cared for refugees, and you said this was a last-minute ad, right?
Yes, it was. We actually didn't find out that this was being added to his schedule until a couple of days ago when we were getting the formal briefing on the trip. You know, there are, you know, Hungary has a population of just under 10 million people, and the Vatican estimates that of those, about 5.6 million are Catholics. And that includes a strong community of about 300,000 strong of Greek Catholics. So he wants to offer a message of support, but he really also wants to send a clear message and plea for peace. And I think doing that with the Greek Catholic community from Hungary, you know, which shares the border with Ukraine, is going to send a very strong message.
Yes, a very significant trip. Elisa Allen, senior correspondent for Crux. We'll check back in with you when you return. Safe travels.
Thank you, Christine.
Be sure to stay tuned to Currents News and the tablet as we continue our coverage of the Pope's trip. As we mentioned, Elise will be traveling with the Pontiff, and we will be following her reports. The Pope isn't just preparing for his trip, he's also making historic moves, such as giving women the right to vote at the Synod. This decision will give women a much larger role in the church that has mostly been handled by cardinals, bishops, and clerics. Women have demanded a right to vote for years, with cardinals calling this an important change. There's a lot more news headed your way.
We are now averaging about 1,000 migrants a day crossing through areas like Brownsville, Texas.
Too many migrants to handle. Border Patrol agents call for backup to deal with a massive influx. Plus, finding a fix, what the government is doing to address a growing number of issues at the airport. And a lifetime of wedded bliss, the major milestone achieved by a husband and wife.
Holy Week in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Currents News was there to cover it all. From the Palm Sunday procession.
About 100 Catholics took to the streets of Brooklyn.
To the Chrism Mass.
Currents News' Jessica Easthope is in the thick of it all.
There are some priests here celebrating their 65th anniversary of ordination.
The conclusion of the first Lenten pilgrimage.
Bishop Brennan joined pilgrims for a majority of the journey.
Holy Thursday and the Way of the Cross on Good Friday.
The Way of the Cross is making its way over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Plus, powerful testimonies from new Catholics.
I'm blessed to be able to wake up every morning.
And a message of hope from Bishop Brennan.
Christ is alive.
Currents News is there. Happy Easter.
Border Patrol agents are working extra hard with a massive influx of migrants trying to enter the United States recently. So much so that they're calling for backup from local police. Currents News' Andy Madison has more on this unique partnership.
A surge of migrants in Brownsville, Texas. More than 2,000 crossing into the city near the levee. Brownsville police called in to help handle the surge by Border Patrol.
It is not typical where we have actually helped federal agencies, especially like Border Patrol and Customs.
Brownsville police investigator and spokesperson Martin Sandoval says officers will be stationed near levee as long as Border Patrol needs them. But their role is limited.
As peace officers in the state of Texas, we cannot enforce federal laws. So that's why we work under the guidance of Border Patrol.
Officers are helping Border Patrol maintain control of the area. They're also helping to direct migrants into designated lines. Women stand together. So do the men. Another line is for families. We're told a majority of those who have crossed, 70%, are from Venezuela. This isn't the first time Brownsville police has been helping with immigration-related issues. Just over a week ago, officers were called to the Brownsville-Matamoros International Bridge. where 700 migrants rushed it.
Border Patrol agents are very busy in the Rio Grande Valley.
The increase in border crossings comes ahead of Title 42, set to expire next month. That is the COVID-related policy that allowed immigration authorities to turn away migrants at the border because of COVID concerns.
For us to be this busy, especially at a time right before the sunset of Title 42, is very concerning for me as the chief. We are now averaging about 1,000 migrants a day crossing through areas like Brownsville, Texas.
Although border crossing numbers are considered high for this time of year, Border Patrol's Rio Grande Valley sector chief feels her agents are ready for what may be ahead.
I assure you, the Rio Grande Valley is an experienced and very mature sector. These agents here are very knowledgeable and very focused on what they're encountering on that border.
Title 42 has been in effect since March 2020. Chavez says the COVID-related policy helped stem the flow of migrants. Agents will have to adjust.
Because we're trying to get back into the process of how we manage people and processing of those that were crossing illegally into the United States prior to the pandemic of COVID.
Andy Madison, Currents News.
A new study is showing that the number of Hispanics in the United States who identify as Catholic is dropping off, and it's happening fast. According to Pew Research Center, 43% of Latino adults identify as Catholic. That's down from 67% in 2010, a steep decline in just a decade. In the meantime, the number of Latinos who consider themselves religiously unaffiliated is growing, up from 10% in 2010 to 30% now. But some parishes in the Diocese of Brooklyn are bucking that trend just as dramatically. For example, the Tablet newspaper is reporting mass attendance at Our Lady of Sorrows in Corona, Queens has gone up by a few thousand. Weekend masses can reach 10,000 and more. You could read about how they've managed to turn the tide, plus the plan leaders in the diocese have to help more people find their faith in this week's Tablet. The paper is also reporting a Diocese of Brooklyn artist has received a national award for her work. Last June, Patricia Brintle of Queens painted a series of portraits called Inclusive Icons, showing people from various cultures throughout the history of the Catholic Church. The art was displayed at the Church of St. Francis Xavier in Lower Manhattan and is now being awarded by an organization that supports sacred spaces. You could read more about the art, plus see all the stories people of faith should know by picking up the paper at your church this weekend. You can also subscribe to the paper online at thetablet.org. People are celebrating at St. John's University's Queens campus because the final piece of a new steel structure is in place. A steel beam was installed during a topping off ceremony in what will become the St. Vincent Health Sciences Center. Clergy members, union workers, trustees, and more were on hand. The building will open in a little over a year and will be a state-of-the-art facility to train future healthcare workers. If you've got a flight in your future, you better prepare yourself for delays, cancellations, and lost bags. Those top the list of passenger complaints, which quadrupled last year. Gloria Pazmino explains what the government is doing to address these issues.
Airline passenger complaints are skyrocketing, according to data released this month from the Department of Transportation.
It's kind of awful. We've got cancellations, we've got lost baggage, we've got airlines that won't give us refunds.
The top grievance?
About a third of complaints were about the cancellations and delays, which it's notable. Last year we had 190,000 canceled flights in this country.
It's a turbulent time for the airline industry as it grapples with staffing shortages and schedule cuts.
The operating environment is much more difficult.
At a budget hearing Wednesday for the Federal Aviation Administration, Congressman Mike Quigley echoed the concerns of many flyers.
It's been tough this year listening to constituents during some of the more frustrating times. I had someone say, I don't feel like I'm buying a ticket, I feel like I'm buying a chance.
To protect yourself, experts recommend booking a morning flight. They tend to get canceled less frequently. Also, download your airline's app a few days before you travel.
If you do need to get notifications about whether it's a gate change, a delay, or if you need to rebook, it's much easier to do it through the app than it is to try and call in to an 800 number and rot on hold for hours and hours.
I'm Gloria Pazmino reporting.
Still to come on Currents News.
I'm a very lucky guy.
I'll agree to that.
Happy Happy wife, happy life, right? Meet the couple celebrating their everlasting love. And the Mass that celebrated both faith and history.
Franks, rice, and beans.
It's a recipe for a faith-filled mission. The parishioner at Our Lady of Grace who cooks for the homeless every week.
It makes me feel good when I come down and I can do something to help out other people, which is what Jesus really wants us to do. He wants to help out other people.
Pat Fleming makes up the pulse of the parish, Thursday on Currents News. Parishioners in Maspeth, Queens celebrated their faith and their parish history on Saturday. Transfiguration and St. Stanislaus Kostka churches are both honoring over a century of bringing faith to the people of Queens. The combined parish's anniversary Mass was celebrated by Bishop Robert Brennan at Transfiguration Church, which according to the parish opened 115 years ago as the first Lithuanian national church in Maspeth. Decades before that, in 1872, St. Stanislaus Church had been built to help serve the growing community of Catholic settlers. The two parishes merged in 2019, combining their 265 years of worship in Maspeth into one loving, faith-filled community. Following the anniversary Mass at Transfiguration, there was exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, then a procession to St. Stanislaus Church for benediction. There's a big celebration happening in Rhode Island, 1¾ of a century in the making. One couple marking a lifetime of love with their diamond anniversary. Sam Reed introduces us.
Every morning, employees at the Cranston Diner get ready for their breakfast boom, and customers of all kinds make their way in to fill their stomachs. And like every other day, there's a lot of specials. But that word, special, would best describe this bunch in the back.
The love is just unheard of from everybody here.
About 24 people, all family and friends, have gathered here to celebrate love that was built by these two.
Family means everything to them.
98-year-old Robert Gorman and his beautiful bride, 95-year-old Anne Marie. Why are you guys here today?
Our 75th anniversary.
What do you think about that?
I think it's wonderful she put up with me.
I'm thinking of going back and doing it over again.
After returning home from the war in the 1940s, Robert met Anne while working at a mill.
I told him to get lost.
And 2 years later, they were married at Our Lady of Mount Carmel on Federal Hill. Then came 2 biological children and an adoptive son.
To be my age and have both my parents, it's like unheard of.
Cheryl Narcessian is their daughter.
People can't believe it. It's, you know, it's amazing. It really is.
She says though her family didn't have a lot of money, they were rich in other ways.
They definitely lean on each other for strength.
The pair says there's really no secret to their success.
We used to argue every morning. And then we'd make up every night.
But sarcasm and laughter have helped in more ways than one.
That's it, one's enough.
During their day party, alongside dessert, the original Bible and cake topper from their 1940s wedding were on display.
I'm a very lucky guy.
I'll agree to that.
And the two also agree, amidst all the celebrations, the sweetest thing of all has been a love like this.
It was a pleasure, really.
I couldn't ask for a better partner. No way in the world will I find a better girl than her.
I love them. It's a good thing he didn't get lost when she told him to. That was Sam Reed reporting. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, just 0.1% of all marriages last 70 years. Wow. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.